November 22nd, 1986. Las Vegas, the Hilton Center. Trevor Berbick stood in his corner, the reigning WBC heavyweight champion, a seasoned warrior who had gone 12 rounds with Muhammad Ali, a man who had never been knocked out in his entire professional career. Across from him, a 20-year-old kid from Brooklyn, Mike Tyson, the youngest challenger to ever fight for the heavyweight championship. But here's what nobody knew that night, what the cameras didn't show, what the commentators couldn't see. Trevor Berbick was already broken. Not in round 1, not in round 2, before the first bell even rang. And by the end of this fight, grown men would be crying, not tears of joy, not tears of celebration, tears of absolute terror. Let me tell you what really happened that night. The weigh-in happened 24 hours before the fight. Standard procedure. Both fighters step on the scale, stare each other down, pose for the cameras. But this wasn't standard at all. When Tyson walked into that room, something was different. The usual trash talk, the bravado, the championship confidence you'd expect from a title holder. None of it was there. Berbick's trainer, Angelo Dundee, one of the greatest cornermen in boxing history, the man who trained Muhammad Ali, he noticed it immediately. He pulled Berbick aside and whispered something. We don't know exactly what he said, but witnesses reported that Berbick's face went pale. Because when Tyson looked at Berbick during that stare down, it wasn't the look of a challenger. It wasn't respect. It wasn't nervousness. It was the look of a predator that had already decided how this was going to end. Berbick blinked first. He looked away. And in that moment, the psychological warfare was over. Tyson had already won. Now let's talk about what made this fight different from anything the boxing world had ever seen. Mike Tyson wasn't just another heavyweight prospect. He was the product of a system, a machine designed by Cus D'Amato specifically to destroy the human psyche. Cus didn't just train fighters. He studied fear. He understood that boxing wasn't about who hit harder. It was about who could impose their will, who could break the other man's spirit before the first punch ever landed. And Tyson, he was Cus D'Amato's masterpiece, the peekaboo style, the explosive head movement, the way Tyson would slip punches by mere millimeters and then explode upward with devastating uppercuts. Every single movement was designed to make his opponent feel helpless. But there was something else, something deeper. Tyson didn't just want to beat you. He wanted to make you question everything. Your training, your courage, your manhood. He wanted to break you. The night before the Berbick fight, Tyson didn't sleep. This is documented. His trainer, Kevin Rooney, found him shadowboxing at 3 a.m. in his hotel room, just throwing combinations in the dark. Hundreds of them, over and over. When Rooney asked him what he was doing, Tyson said something chilling. I'm making sure he sees it coming but can't stop it. Think about that for a second. Most fighters train to land clean shots, to catch their opponent by surprise. Not Tyson. He wanted Berbick to see the punches, to know they were coming, and to realize there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. That's not boxing strategy. That's psychological torture. Let me tell you something else about the days leading up to this fight. The media didn't give Tyson much of a chance. Sure, he was undefeated. Sure, he had devastating power. But Berbick was the champion. He had experience. He had been in the ring with Ali, one of the greatest of all time. The odds were actually close. Some bookmakers even favored Berbick slightly. They had no idea what was coming. Tyson's camp knew, though. There's a story that never made it to the papers. 3 days before the fight, Tyson was doing pad work with Kevin Rooney. Just routine training, getting the timing right. A journalist was watching. He asked Rooney how long he thought the fight would last. Rooney didn't even pause. 2 rounds, maybe less. The journalist laughed, thought he was joking, tried to get a serious answer. Rooney looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm not joking. Mike's not coming here to win on points. He's coming to make a statement." That statement? That boxing had entered a new era, an era where experience didn't matter, where titles didn't matter, where nothing mattered except raw, undeniable dominance. And Berbick, he was about to become the example. The bell rang. Berbick came out cautious, smart. He tried to use his jab to keep distance, tried to make it a technical fight. He'd been in there with Ali. He knew how to survive against dangerous opponents. But within 30 seconds, everything he knew became useless. Tyson didn't respect the jab. He slipped under it, moved his head with that supernatural speed, and suddenly he was inside, in Berbick's chest, too close to jab, too close to move. The first body shot landed like a sledgehammer. Berbick's entire body folded, just for a fraction of a second. But that's all Tyson needed. He saw it, the weakness, the crack in the armor, and he went to work. What happened next wasn't a boxing match. It was a dismantling. Punch after punch, not wild swings. Calculated destruction. Left hook to the body, right uppercut, left hook upstairs. Berbick tried to clinch, tried to hold. The referee separated them. Big mistake. Because every time they reset, Tyson came back harder, faster, meaner. Now here's something most people don't understand about Tyson's power. It wasn't just about strength. Plenty of heavyweights hit hard. George Foreman hit harder on paper. Ernie Shavers, Deontay Wilder in the modern era. These guys had devastating power. But Tyson's punches were different. They came from angles you couldn't see. He'd be at your chest level, bobbing and weaving, and suddenly an uppercut would come from below your line of sight. By the time your brain registered it, the punch had already landed. And it wasn't just one punch. It was combinations. 3, 4, 5 punches in the time it took most fighters to throw 2. Each one landing with bad intentions. Berbick was trying to process what was happening, trying to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Every time he thought he had Tyson figured out, Tyson would shift, change the angle, come from a different side. It was like fighting a ghost that could punch through walls. By the 90-second mark of round 1, you could see the realization on Berbick's face. This wasn't going to be a competitive fight. This wasn't going to be a war. This was going to be survival, and survival wasn't looking likely. But here's what most people don't know about that first round. There was a moment. About 90 seconds in, Berbick landed a clean right hand, caught Tyson flush on the jaw. It was a good shot, the kind that would stagger most fighters, the kind that could change the momentum of a fight. Tyson didn't even blink. He just smiled. That smile. People who were there still talk about it. It wasn't joy. It wasn't cockiness. It was the smile of someone who just confirmed what he already knew. You can't hurt me, but I'm going to destroy you. Berbick saw that smile, and something inside him broke. He threw the punch that was supposed to save him, his best weapon, his equalizer. And Tyson had taken it like it was nothing. In that moment, Berbick knew he was in the ring with something he had never encountered before. Not Ali, not Holmes, not anyone. This was different. When the bell rang to end round 1, Berbick walked back to his corner like a man walking to the gallows. His legs were still strong, His eyes were clear. Physically, he was fine. But mentally, he was already gone. Angelo Dundee knew it too. You could see it in his body language, the way he worked on Berbick in the corner. He wasn't giving instructions for how to win anymore. He was giving instructions for how to survive. Keep your hands up. Move. Don't let him set his feet. Clinch if you have to. Survival tactics. But against Tyson, even survival was a luxury. The crowd could feel it too. The energy in the arena had shifted. The initial excitement had turned into something else. Anticipation mixed with dread. They knew they were watching something historic, but they also knew they were watching a man being broken in real time. Between rounds, in Tyson's corner, Kevin Rooney said exactly 5 words. Same thing. Don't stop. That's all Tyson needed to hear, because he had no intention of stopping. The second round started, and Tyson came out like a man possessed. No feeling out, no strategy adjustment, pure aggression. Berbick tried everything. He tried to box. He tried to brawl. He tried to survive. Nothing worked. Tyson was everywhere at once. Slipping punches, landing combinations, moving his head so fast that Berbick was punching at ghosts. Let me paint you a picture of what was happening in that ring. Berbick would throw a jab. Tyson would slip it by moving his head maybe 2 inches, just enough. Then, before Berbick could even retract his arm, Tyson would fire back with a 3-punch combination. Left hook to the body, right uppercut, left hook to the head, all in less than a second. Berbick couldn't process it. His brain was trying to defend against the first punch while the third one was already landing. It was information overload, physical overload, mental overload. The crowd was on their feet now, not cheering, just watching in stunned silence, because what they were witnessing wasn't a boxing match anymore. It was an execution. 30 seconds into round 2, Tyson landed a right uppercut that lifted Berbick's head back so violently that people in the front rows heard the impact. It sounded like a baseball bat hitting a side of beef. Berbick stumbled. Not badly. He kept his feet. But you could see in his eyes that something had changed. The fight or flight instinct had kicked in. And in boxing, there's nowhere to fly. Tyson sensed it, like a shark sensing blood in the water. He pressed forward, cut off the ring, gave Berbick nowhere to go. And then it happened. The punch that would be replayed 1,000,000 times. The punch that would define this fight. The punch that would become part of boxing folklore. A left hook, short, compact, perfect. It caught Berbick on the temple. Now, let me explain what happens when you get hit on the temple with the force that Tyson generated. The temple is one of the most vulnerable spots on the human skull. It's where the bone is thinnest, where the brain is least protected. When Tyson's fist made contact, the impact created what's called a concussive wave. The shock went straight through Berbick's skull and rattled his brain against the inside of his cranium. His equilibrium center, the part of your brain that controls balance, just shut off. What happened next was something nobody had ever seen before in a heavyweight championship fight. Berbick fell, but he didn't fall like a normal knockout. He fell like someone whose body had forgotten how legs work. He went down, hard. The referee started counting. Berbick got up at 4, but his legs weren't underneath him. They were doing their own thing. He took 2 steps and fell again. The referee waved his hands, trying to call it off, but Berbick got up again. Pure instinct, pure pride, pure championship heart. His legs betrayed him a 3rd time. He fell into the ropes. The ropes held him up. He was still trying to fight, still trying to prove something. The referee had seen enough. He stepped in and waved it off. 2 rounds, 5 minutes and 35 seconds. Mike Tyson, at 20 years and 144 days old, became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history. But that's not the story. The story is what happened in those seconds after the stoppage. Berbick was still on the canvas, trying to stand. His corner rushed in. 3 grown men, professional boxing trainers, men who had seen everything this sport had to offer. They were trying to help him up, trying to steady him, trying to get him on the stool. And that's when the cameras caught it. Angelo Dundee, the legendary cornerman, the man who had been in the corner for Ali's greatest triumphs, the man who had seen Ali take punishment from Frazier, from Foreman, from every killer in the heavyweight division. He was crying, not quiet tears, not subtle emotion, full shoulder-shaking sobs. His cutman, Dave Brown, was crying too, tears streaming down his face as he tried to help Berbick to his feet. Why were they crying? Berbick wasn't seriously hurt. He would recover. He would fight again. They were crying because they had just witnessed something that shook them to their core. They had watched a young man systematically destroy an experienced champion, not with lucky punches, not with referee help, not with anything except pure, calculated violence. They had watched their fighter, a man they believed in, a man who had beaten legends, get reduced to nothing in less than 6 minutes. But more than that, they had seen the look in Tyson's eyes, the complete absence of mercy, the cold efficiency, the machine-like precision. They realized in that moment that boxing had changed forever, that what they had just witnessed was the birth of something terrifying. One of the reporters at ringside, a veteran who had covered boxing for 30 years, said something that night that never made it into the official reports. He said, "I've seen men knocked out before. I've seen brutal knockouts. But I've never seen a man's soul leave his body while he was still conscious. That's what I saw tonight." Think about that for a second. Berbick was physically fine after the fight. No broken bones, no serious concussion. He walked out of the arena under his own power. But something had been taken from him in that ring, something that could never be given back. His sense of invincibility, his belief that he could compete at the highest level, his identity as a world champion. All of it gone in 335 seconds. After the fight, in the locker room, something even more disturbing happened. Berbick couldn't remember the fight. Not the knockout, not the second round. He barely remembered the first round. The doctors checked him. Concussion protocol. He was physically okay. No permanent damage. But something had happened to his mind. He kept asking the same question over and over. Did I fight? Did the fight happen? His trainer had to show him the tape, had to prove to him that yes, he had just been in a championship fight. Yes, he had just lost his title. Berbick watched the tape in silence. And when it was over, when he saw himself fall 3 times from that one punch, when he saw his own eyes, empty, confused, broken, he said something that nobody expected. That wasn't boxing, that was something else. He never spoke about that fight again in detail. For the rest of his career, whenever journalists asked him about Tyson, he would give short answers, generic responses. But people close to him said he had nightmares about it for years. The boxing world didn't know how to react. Some people celebrated. A new champion, a new era, the youngest ever. But the people who really understood boxing, they were terrified. Larry Holmes, former heavyweight champion, said, "I watched that fight and I said a prayer. I prayed I never have to fight that man. George Foreman, who had fought everyone, who feared nothing, said, Tyson doesn't fight like he wants to win. He fights like he wants to end you. Even Muhammad Ali, who had seen and done everything, watched that fight and said, I've never seen anything like that before. But here's what's really haunting about this story. This wasn't even prime Tyson. This was a 20-year-old kid, still learning, still developing. Cus D'Amato had died just a year earlier. Tyson was still grieving, still finding his way, and he had just destroyed a world champion like he was nothing. Imagine what he would become. The Berbick fight changed boxing forever. After that night, nobody looked at the heavyweight division the same way. Every champion, every contender, every prospect, they all had to answer one question. Can you survive Mike Tyson? And for most of them, the honest answer was no. Trevor Berbick continued fighting after that night, had a decent career, won some fights, lost some fights, but he was never the same. People who sparred with him said he developed a flinch. Whenever someone threw a left hook, even in training, he would pull back, overreact, protect himself more than necessary. The trauma was permanent. In later interviews, Berbick tried to save face, tried to say he wasn't properly prepared, that he had taken the fight on short notice, that politics had worked against him. But his eyes told a different story. He had looked into the abyss that night, and the abyss had destroyed him in under 6 minutes. The night Mike Tyson made grown men cry wasn't about the knockout. It wasn't about the championship. It wasn't even about the dominance. It was about what happens when you create a perfect weapon. When you take a troubled kid from Brooklyn, someone who had been written off by society, someone who had been told he would never amount to anything, and turn him into something that transcends sport. Cus D'Amato used to say, the hero and the coward feel the same fear. The difference is what they do with it. That night Trevor Berbick felt fear, and it consumed him. Mike Tyson felt nothing. And that's what made grown men cry. Not the violence, not the knockout, not even the dominance. The complete absence of mercy. The realization that they were watching something that had never existed before in boxing. Something that maybe shouldn't exist. A fighter with no conscience in the ring. No hesitation. No doubt. No remorse. Just pure, unstoppable force. But here's something most people don't think about. What was going through Tyson's mind in those moments after the fight? He had just achieved what he'd been training for his entire life. He was the youngest heavyweight champion in history. He had made boxing history. He should have been ecstatic, celebrating, enjoying the moment. But if you watch the footage carefully, you see something different. Tyson didn't celebrate much. He raised his hands. He acknowledged the crowd, but his face, his expression, it was almost blank, almost disappointed. Because for Tyson, this wasn't the end of a journey. It was just the beginning. He knew what he was capable of. He knew that Berbick, as good as he was, wasn't his real challenge. His real challenge was himself, his demons, his past, all the trauma and pain that Cus D'Amato had channeled into making him a fighter. Years later, Tyson would talk about this in interviews. He'd say that winning the title didn't make him happy. It made him feel empty. Because the chase, the hunger, the need to prove himself, that's what drove him. And once he had the belt, he didn't know what came next. That emptiness, that void, that would eventually lead to his downfall. But that night, November 22nd, 1986, none of that mattered. That night, he was perfect. The youngest heavyweight champion in history, the baddest man on the planet, the fighter who made grown men cry. November 22nd, 1986. The night everything changed. The night boxing realized it had created a monster. The night Mike Tyson became Iron Mike. The night Trevor Berbick's soul left his body while his heart was still beating. The night grown men cried. And somewhere, in whatever afterlife exists for trainers and mentors, Cus D'Amato was watching. Maybe he was proud. Maybe he was sad. Maybe he knew what he had created would eventually destroy itself. But that night, his masterpiece was complete. Mike Tyson wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was a force of nature. He was inevitable. He was everything Cus had promised he would be. If you want more untold stories like this, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started. We're going deep into the moments that defined Mike Tyson, the encounters that shaped the legend, the stories that never made it to the headlines. Next time, we'll talk about the 30-second knockout that the Boxing Commission tried to ban. The fight that was so brutal, so one-sided, so devastating, that people questioned whether Tyson should even be allowed to continue fighting. Until then, remember this. Legends aren't born. They're forged in moments like these, in violence, in dominance, in the complete destruction of everything that came before them. Mike Tyson didn't just beat Trevor Berbick that night. He erased him. He sent a message to every heavyweight in the world. Your time is over. My time has begun. And for the next few years, nobody could argue with that message, because they were all too afraid to try.